the more glucose spikes we have, the faster glycation happens, the faster we age. And that shows on the skin as wrinkles. As collagen molecules glycate, they become less flexible. That leads to wrinkles. And on the inside.
What are the foods that people should be looking out for and avoiding to keep the fat off and to encourage longevity? Because that's something that I think a lot of people are interested in, living longer and healthier.
I think my number one food that I want people to stay away from is sweet breakfast food. So granola, sweet cereal, fruit juice, acai bowls, pastries, sweet oats, all the breakfast stuff that has been marketed as like good for you, you need sugar in the morning to have energy. Actually, it's just a one-way ticket to a glucose roller coaster and feeling like crap.
Damn. So why is that? Why is it that sweet foods are worth avoiding in the morning?
Well, because when you talk about breakfast sweet foods, they're usually pure starches and sugars, right? So for example, if you look at a bowl of oats with honey, oats are basically only starch, honey is sugar. And both of those types of foods contain a lot of glucose molecules. And so when you eat a breakfast that is just sugar and starches, you're basically giving your body a massive load of glucose molecules to deal with. It creates a big glucose spike, inflammation, glycation, insulin release, then a crash that makes you hungry, tired, and then your whole day is deregulated. Breakfast is actually really important to get right and to avoid a glucose spike during so that your whole day feels good. And then you have energy, you can go after the things you want to go after, you feel good, your brain is clear, etc.
Does what you eat as the first meal in the day, the meal that you break your fast with, does that influence your hunger for the rest of the day?
Yes. So studies have shown that if you have a big spike at breakfast, number one, you'll be hungry again much sooner. You'll eat more at lunch and you'll eat more at dinner.
Damn.
So your breakfast glucose curve really controls your entire day. And that's why, I grew up eating Nutella crepe, because I'm French, and orange juice every morning for breakfast. And I didn't realize that my entire day of cravings and feeling tired and feeling hungry all the time was because of that breakfast. It really controls you. And if you've spent your whole life doing just starches and sugars for breakfast and you switch to a savory breakfast built around protein, your entire experience of your day changes. And for many people, it's like, in the movies when you sort of walk through the mirror, like it's really like Alice in Wonderland vibes. Like you enter a whole new experience of the world with a savory breakfast.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are some examples of accessible, low-cost savory breakfasts?
Soft boiled eggs, my favorite. My other favorite, leftovers. So whatever you had for dinner last night, heat it up, have it for breakfast. Maybe crack a few eggs in there, grate some Parmesan cheese on it. I'm obsessed with Parmesan. So
it's actually Parmesan
savory.
cheese is like one of the highest in terms of protein, proportion of protein. Parmesan cheese is like the best. It's like the protein shake of the cheese world.
I think I eat Parmesan every single day.
Really?
And I calculated, I think I had like 300 pounds of it in my whole life. Like I'm properly obsessed. Like I always have a lot of Parmesan in my fridge. A lot.
It's good stuff.
It's good stuff. I love it.
So yeah, eggs. Eggs are one of these like staple foods. Do you is there a specific way to cook them that's better than others, or like?
I don't know. You might know.
I don't know.
I don't know about the cooking of the eggs.
I mean, I would generally.
The quality of the eggs matters, right? If you can get like from chickens that were not fed just corn and had actually some space to roam and stuff.
Better for the chickens.
Better for the chickens, yeah.
And also the environment.
Yeah.
When I'm buying eggs, I look for. It's pretty easy to find omega-3 enriched eggs. Pastured eggs, I think, is really important. Cage-free, all that stuff. Yeah. I think it definitely warrants doing a show in the future on all the different sort of like marketing.
Because you see like the organic eggs, but does that just mean they were fed like organic industrial feed, like you don't really know, and the cage-free and the roaming? Yeah, that'd be a good idea actually.
Yeah, a lot of it is just marketing. You'll see like natural eggs. It's like as opposed to what? Unnatural. I mean, I guess like the plant.
Even like lower quality eggs are better for you than say oats and honey, right? So don't freak out too much about the actual nomenclature of the eggs. Like having protein for breakfast is going to be still better than having cereal, for example, and fruit juice, right?
Totally agree. I actually recently bought an egg cooker on Amazon.
Oh, nice.
Do you have one of these things?
No.
They're amazing. They're like $20-$30. And in like half the time that it would take normally on a stovetop, you can make hard boiled, soft boiled, medium boiled, poached omelets in this like little really nifty egg cooker.
I used to have this like silicone egg that you put into the pot of water with your eggs, and you could see it change color, and it would show you how much the eggs were actually cooked on the inside. But now I have a trick. So it's actually my first recipe in my new book. It's very simple. It's called the 7-minute eggs. Boil water, put the egg in for 7 minutes. It comes out perfectly gooey, perfectly soft boiled, little bit of sea salt, perfect breakfast.
Damn.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's very good.
Okay, so savory breakfast as opposed to sweet breakfast.
Yes.
How do most people consume breakfast today, like here in the, I mean, I know you're not from here, but like typically the standard American breakfast, I would imagine, is pretty bad.
I mean, it's cereal, a lot of fruit juice, right? We still have this belief that we need sugar in the morning to have energy, when actually what's happening when you eat sugar, you get dopamine. You get pleasure in the brain. You don't get energy. That feeling of like, whoa, I'm awake, that's dopamine. That's not energy. On the inside, when you eat a lot of sugar, you're actually harming your mitochondria's long-term ability to make energy effectively. So if you have a sweet breakfast every day of your life, over time, chronic fatigue might set in. And so you're still, eating the sugar, trying to wake yourself up. On the inside, your mitochondria are just stressed out and damaged. So you can't actually produce energy well. And that's a big distinction I want people to understand. Like sugar in the morning, dopamine, pleasure, addiction, it's quite addictive, but it's not the best way to get energy. Studies have shown that if you compare one glucose spiking breakfast to one non-glucose spiking breakfast, the non-glucose spiking one actually leads to more available circulating energy in the body. Also, because the one with no spike doesn't lead to as much insulin release. So less of the energy is actually stored away.
Wow. So is this why so many people tend to feel that afternoon slump? Like they've been hit by a train?
Often that afternoon slump is because you started the day with a spike, glucose spike. Okay, so maybe 8 a.m. or whenever you're having breakfast. Then by 11, you're starving. You really want to eat anything you find. Generally, that's going to be starches and sugars again, right? Like fast-acting carbs. And then you spike again, and then you crash again around 2 or 3. And by that time, you're just exhausted. Your mitochondria not making energy effectively. You've just experienced 2 big spikes and big drops, which are really stressful for the body. You don't have that much energy circulating, so you're exhausted. And one of the first things people tell me when they flatten their breakfast curves is that they unlock energy for the whole day. It feels so good, And you're like, oh, I don't need that third coffee. I don't need to eat that cookie to feel a little bit awake. Actually, my body is producing energy from within. Because your body wants you to have energy. Your body is, fighting for you. Your body is your friend. So if you give it what it needs, it really will give back.
Did you see, there a couple months ago, there was a headline that I saw where apparently cereal companies are now lobbying the FDA to be able to call cereal healthy, which, if I understood the article right, there are certain like guidelines that a food has to meet in order to call itself healthy, which, you can argue that these guidelines are pretty archaic in general as it is, but it's like if they meet a certain like saturated fat limit, cholesterol limit, but sugar is not one of those things. Like you can have all the sugar that you want in a cereal.
It's crazy.
And still call yourself healthy, but these new FDA guidelines, I think, are putting sugar as one of those like potential guidelines, which is going to negate the ability of cereal manufacturers to claim that their cereals are healthy.
Well, thank God.
Which they're now going to fight against.
Of course they're going to fight against. It's like regulation on cigarettes. Like they're going to fight, and then we're going to be really happy that the regulation happened. Like it needs to happen.
Yeah.
It needs to happen. We can't have kids in this country growing up on breakfast cereal with parents thinking they're giving them something healthy for them. Like it's a real issue, And it's not the parents' fault. Like the marketing is so strong. Everybody thinks that's actually good for the kid. It says on the cereal package, like high in fiber, like good for your heart. It's cheap. The kids like eating it. Okay, big plus. So we're in a situation now where it's really good things are changing because people are sick and people are not okay.
Yeah. Did you see the food compass thing?
Saying Cheerios are healthier than eggs?
Yeah. Cheerios, healthier fruit, like Lucky Charms. What do you think when you saw that?
Well, to me, it was laughable. I was like, it would be just funny if it wasn't so damaging, right? I just think it's crazy. I think it's truly, truly crazy. Clearly, so many interests are at play. Clearly, the actual good scientists in the world doing proper nutrition research have not been consulted on this. Who actually funded it? Who studied this? What's the background?
Yeah, well, it came out of the Friedman School for Nutrition at Tufts University, and there were many conflicts of interests. Whether they were, the lead authors, the principal investigators were involved. I know that, and he's generally a very legitimate he's a highly respected nutrition scientist, but he, takes checks from like, Barilla, which is like a pasta maker, and all these different industrial, food companies. And so
I think most people in the nutrition world laughed at that and saw how crazy that was. But there are many consumers and lots of media outlets who are using that, and then people are going to believe it. But which, of course, they would, right?
Yeah.
So I just hope one day that this kind of stuff is just not even going to fly anymore.
Yeah. So tell me about these glucose curves. You mentioned that when you're peaking, so to speak, with regard to a glucose spike, there's inflammation occurring. Is this all
glycation?
Yeah, glycation. Yeah. What is inflammation, glycation for people that are either unfamiliar or need a refresher?
Yeah, so glucose spikes is something that we thought only diabetics should care about for a really long time. We thought, glucose, that's for people with diabetes. Everybody else shouldn't care. And recently that has slowly shifted. We've started to realize that even if you don't have diabetes, you could still be experiencing what's called a glucose spike, which is a rapid increase in blood sugar levels after eating into ranges that previously we thought would only be attainable by people with diabetes. That's important. We're not talking about small, 20 milligram spikes. We're talking about big spikes. So even if you don't have diabetes and if your fasting glucose levels are normal, you can still be experiencing these spikes. And these spikes lead to many symptoms. The most common ones being cravings, being hungry every couple of hours, being tired, skin issues like inflammation that shows as acne, psoriasis, eczema. Brain fog is a common consequence of these, fertility impact, and then long-term, of course, the development of type 2 diabetes. So why do these spikes actually lead to these symptoms? What's going on in the body? There are three main biological mechanisms that take place when you experience a glucose spike. So just a minute ago, I talked about your mitochondria, which are the
powerhouses of your cells.
There we go. Powerhouses of your cells. And these mitochondria, they're usually really happy when they receive glucose because they turn glucose into energy. And that's good, right? We all want energy. The problem is when a glucose spike happens, so when you give the body too much glucose too quickly, problems start happening. Your mitochondria become stressed out. Instead of being able to turn the glucose into energy, they kind of go on strike. They're like, whoa, too much, cannot deal, and they shut down. And so as a result, they're not making energy as effectively anymore. That stressed mitochondria leads to the release of something, it's a bit technical, something called reactive oxygen species, tiny molecules that are very damaging to the body. That in turn leads to oxidative stress, which just means your cells are breaking down, and that increases inflammation. So that's the main process by which glucose spikes lead to inflammation and fatigue. Second, glycation. So I love taking this example. When you put a chicken in the oven, it goes from pink to brown.
Mm-hmm.
Through that process, it cooks. And that cooking process is actually glycation. And as a human being, from the moment you're born, you slowly glycate, you slowly cook, you slowly age. It's the same concept. And then when you're fully cooked, you die. So when scientists look at the cartilage of babies, it's white. When they look at the cartilage of people who are 100 years old, the cartilage is brown.
Wow.
Because it's been glycating and browning and aging. So aging is a part of life. We can't stop it. Well, not yet. Let's see what these amazing tech people are able to do, but we can't really stop it so far. However, we can slow it down or speed it up. The more glucose spikes we have, the faster glycation happens, the faster we age. And that shows on the skin as wrinkles, as collagen molecules glycate, they become less flexible. That leads to wrinkles. And on the inside, you can't see it, but you can feel it. Your organs slowly slow down, deteriorate, and age. So that's the second thing that happens when a glucose spike takes place. We age faster, especially if the spike came from sweet foods. And third, your body knows that these spikes are not helpful. Your body knows the spikes have consequences. So your body has an amazing tool to get that glucose level down. What it does is it releases insulin. Insulin is a hormone. We love her. She's amazing. She takes excess glucose away and stores it into our muscle, our liver, and our fat cells. That's one of the ways we gain fat on our body. And while insulin is cool, too much insulin over time leads to its own set of problems, notably prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and fertility problems like PCOS. So those are the three main reasons glucose spikes are not good for you.
Yeah, so well put. So, but like, does that mean that? I mean, you mentioned that a small, bump in glucose isn't. We're not talking about those. We're talking about these big spikes. But does that mean that, like, for example, a bowl of rice is suddenly like, a highly damaging food, or?
No, I mean, so everything is relative, and I'm really not a proponent of cutting out the starches and sugars that actually cause the glucose spikes. I'm more like, let's teach people some easy principles so they can eat the rice and the chocolate cake and everything in a way that creates less of a spike so that you mitigate some of the impact. So I'm really more in that camp versus the like cut out all carbs camp.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, you're French. Like, I feel like that would make life pretty difficult, right?
Also just me as a person. So when I discovered I was having these spikes and they were harming my mental health, I was like, okay, I don't want the spikes because I don't want the mental health issues, but I want to eat pasta and chocolate. So I sort of went on this quest to figure out what are some things I can put in place to reduce the spikes and still live the life I want to live. Some things are easy to give up, like the sweet breakfast foods. Like I would never go back to that. And I recommend everybody stays away from that forever. But other stuff like adding in a veggie starter before a meal so you can have all the rice and pasta you want with less of an impact, using the vinegar trick before you have chocolate cake, etc. I think that's just a healthier, more balanced way to live life than to try to cut out all the carbs and label them evil, etc. I don't think that's very helpful.
Yeah, what's the vinegar trick?
So the vinegar trick, it's in week 2 of my new book. So the vinegar trick is 1 tablespoon of vinegar in a tall glass of water, like these ones, before a meal, can reduce the glucose spike of the meal by up to 30% and the insulin spike by up to 20%.
Wow.
Without changing what you're eating afterwards. So the reason this works is because vinegar contains acetic acid, another very cool molecule. Acetic acid does 2 things. Number 1, it slows down this enzyme we have called alpha amylase, which breaks down starches into glucose molecules. So it slows down how quickly that rice, for example, is turning into individual molecules and making its way into the bloodstream. And second, acetic acid goes to your muscles and tells your muscles to soak up excess glucose as it arrives into your bloodstream. So you have glucose is arriving more slowly into the blood and it's being soaked up by your muscles. So smaller spike from that same meal.
Yeah, I love that. And that acetic acid is, I mean, that's, as far as I know, it's in all forms of vinegar.
Exactly.
Right?
It doesn't have to be just apple cider vinegar, even though that's like the most popular one. Any vinegar, white wine vinegar, red wine vinegar, balsamic, anyone.
What about, I see ads on TV now for like apple cider vinegar gummies.
No, stay away.
It's like the most ridiculous product ever.
Well,
but apparently they're making bank, like they're selling.
It's a huge problem because actually a lot of them contain a bunch of sugar. So you're eating this gummy that has some acetic acid, but also like a gram of sugar. So even though you might be getting some benefit from the vinegar, the sugar is going to counteract it and you're going to get a spike from it. So yeah, it's problematic. I mean, it's just another example of like food companies rushing to the new trend to try to make a buck and misleading consumers, which is so unfortunate.
Yeah. Now, how does this relate to like fat loss or fat gain, for example? Because I mean, how does this reconcile with like the energy balance model of obesity that like calories, like irrespective of like where your glucose is, like, weight loss, I think the data is pretty firmly supports the idea that like, if you're eating more calories and you're burning every day, you're going to gain weight. If you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight.
Well, calories are helpful. For me, they're helpful in a way to measure quantity, right? So like if you compare like 100 calories of cake to 500 calories of cake, that's a really helpful metric. But saying 2 foods are the same because they have the same number of calories is like saying 2 books are the same because they have the same number of pages. They're just not.
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe your book and my book have the same number of pages, but they're not the same book. Like mine is so much better.
I see what you did there.
Just kidding.
Maybe it is. It's a good book.
Just kidding. But listen, like if you compare, let's say, do you know how they used to measure calories? Do you know the story behind this?
I don't know.
Okay,
sure,
it's fascinating.
Please.
So at the very beginning, the way they measured calories is by putting, let's say, a donut in a box, submerging that box into a big tank of water, and then lighting the donut inside the small box on fire and measuring by how many degrees the water increased in temperature. So calories are just a measure of how much heat is produced when a food is burned. So in that sense, you could say, okay, this donut and this avocado have the exact same number of calories, which might be true because they both heat up the water by the same amount, but it doesn't say anything about what's actually in the food. What molecules are there? Two people can be eating the exact same number of calories. One person can be eating just starches and sugars. The other one can be eating in a way that keeps their glucose levels steady. The one eating just starches and sugars, having glucose spikes all day, is going to be more inflamed, have more insulin release in their body, probably have mood swings, be hungry and have cravings all the time, maybe have brain fog, maybe have prediabetes. The person who's eating the same number of calories in a way that keeps their glucose level steady is going to have way fewer of those issues. So maybe the weight, fat amount on their body is not that different, although some studies show that even at equal calories, reducing spikes helps you lose fat, eating the same number of calories. But that person with no spike is going to have a much better life. Is going to have a much better experience over their days, you know? It's going to feel much better. So to me, it's a little bit reductive to just focus on, reducing calories for fat loss, etc. I think it goes way beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I love the book analogy. I think
no shade, by the way. We're good.
We're
cool?
good. We're good. Yeah, no beef. Another way that I've heard it described is that like a calorie is a calorie, like a mile is a mile. But the difference between an uphill mile versus a downhill mile are dramatically different in terms of the person's experience who's walking that mile.
Exactly. And so what I see in my readers is that people can just stop focusing on calories and just focus on like, okay, am I eating in a way that's keeping my glucose level steady? And just focus on that. First of all, they sleep better. They have more energy. So they might want to work out more and make better choices. They have fewer cravings, less hunger, and their insulin levels are lower. So kind of naturally, it leads to fat loss, even without trying too much. It's often a consequence. So for my second book, I ran this pilot study on 3,000 people that went through the 4-week method before anybody else. And what we found is that 40% of people lost weight. Keeping in mind that this method does not ask you to cut out anything, does not ask you to count calories. We're talking about switching breakfast, adding vinegar, adding veggie starter, and 10 minutes of movement a day. Okay? And so that's really key for me because I prefer people to focus on like, I want to feel better. I want to have more energy. I want to clear my skin. I want to fix my fertility. And then as a consequence, lose some excess fat, which is totally fine. But if you focus solely on like, I want to do anything it takes to lose fat, you can get into some pretty dark places, Yeah.
Well, I think you see this like meme go around sometimes on the internet. It always seems to like surface every couple of months. I see it, somebody posting it or sharing it with me that like, a nutrition professor lost 50 pounds eating only Twinkies or something like that. Like there's, people will refute this idea that food quality matters. Well, I could just like get away with eating Twinkies and lose the weight.
Well, if you eat only 3 Twinkies a day, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, you'll lose weight eating nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, where's that weight that you're losing coming from?
Yeah.
Also, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's fat and it's muscle.
Yeah, it's fat and it's muscle. Where something like protein, like a high protein food that has negligible impact, is going to have negligible impact on your blood sugar, is the macronutrient that directly is supporting you maintaining your lean mass, which is so important.
No, absolutely. And so when I was 19, I had this accident that kind of kickstarted my health journey. And I broke my back. I had very intense surgery. And then I was in so much pain that I was on so much medication that I couldn't eat for 3 weeks. I lost 20 pounds. But I can tell you, I did not want to lose those 20 pounds. That was absolutely horrible. I had no more muscle, nothing, right? So we have to stay away from this concept of like, oh, losing weight is great. That should be the objective. No. The objective is health, whatever your body size, shape, weight. Like, I understand some people want to lose fat. That's fine. But I do want people to want to do that for the right reasons, for your health, because otherwise you can lose fat in lots of really damaging ways.
Yeah. A lot of the data that you share on social media has come from your own like N of 1 experience using a CGM, right? A continuous glucose monitor.
So often I use my own N of 1 experiments just to illustrate existing studies. So I don't like draw any conclusions from my own data. So for example, I'll find a clinical trial showing that the vinegar hack works, that 1 tablespoon of vinegar before a meal reduces the spike. And this has been done, at statistically significant levels. And I find that study and I'm like, okay, how do I make this visual and interesting and easy for people to grasp? So I'll test the same thing on myself and use my own curves just to illustrate. I would never and have never, and that would be completely insane, draw conclusions from my own experiments. That's really not the objective. I just released this big video called The Science Behind Glucose Goddess on YouTube, where I go into this because it's a common misconception people have. When they first see my account, they might be like, oh, she's just testing stuff on herself and calling that, universal truth, which of course I don't. That would be insane.
So what is the criticism? Like that people are saying that you're demonizing foods based on your own personal, but that was never what you were intending to do. You were just like, this is how these foods are spiking my blood sugar. This is what I'm doing to mitigate those spikes. And maybe it'll work for you.
I don't think it's criticism. I think it's sometimes a little bit of misunderstanding. Like at first glance, you might think that's what I'm doing. But then if you look at a post and you swipe, you see that there's a study behind it.
Yeah.
So it's not like a strong criticism. It's just a misconception that I want to nip in the bud because it's really not what I'm doing. I think the biggest issue I see with doing work on the internet and social media is just some people don't fully grasp like what you're doing, or they don't have all the information. So they jump to conclusions that are wrong. And if they spent like 5 minutes actually reading a little bit, they would realize that's not all what's happening. So I know it's impossible to make sure nobody ever thinks something wrong about my work, but I want to try and reduce that likelihood as much as I can.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like there's so much of that. Well, there's actually, I would say the vast majority of people on the internet are very open and receptive and looking for a better way because, I mean, like statistically, you look at the population, people are not well.
Yeah.
Like what we've been doing, we can't continue doing because it's not working. And yet, you have somebody like you, and I've experienced this myself with my own work, like putting out good information, science-backed information, actionable, achievable.
Balanced, nuanced,
all the things, right? Yeah. Checking all the boxes. But then you get these like NPCs on social media, like whether they're academics or they're from various different tribal, paradigms, like food paradigms, carnivores, plant-based people that they see one like super thin slice of your work out of context and they come after you with their claws out.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem.
I think people spend too much time on social media.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's a thing and you kind of have to deal with it. And I'll repeat the quote that I told you earlier, which is one of my favorite quotes. It's a French quote, but it goes, anytime you do anything, you'll have against you the people doing exactly the same thing, the people doing exactly the opposite, and most importantly, the vast army of people even more judgmental because they do nothing at all.
Yeah.
And that really, I hold that one dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just like these armchair, whatever they happen to be, experts or whatever, and they just like see you and like, they're either threatened or they're jealous or whatever. But I mean, like the impact that you're having in your followers, can you share some of this? Like, because at this point, I feel like, whether or not you're a clinician, you have like a large enough following where like you get a sense that like you can get a sense whether or not the work that you're doing is like impacting people's health.
I mean, hugely. And in the pilot experiment I was telling you about, so I got people to answer a survey every week of the method, and I got some great stats that kind of show you what happens when you start implementing the hacks. I'll tell you the stats. I'll get my phone out.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I won't butcher the numbers, but here.
No, I want to hear. Because I mean, for me personally, like I'm not a clinician. I'm not a medical doctor, but like I've been doing this for 10 years. I have like 3 books out now all over the world. So it's like you have a statistically significant sample size, like with which to mine for data,
Totally. Well, I mean, so this experiment was one thing, but I have thousands and thousands of reviews on Amazon of like 5-star reviews of people saying this has changed my life. I receive, dozens of testimonials a week that I reshare with the community. The impact is amazing. And it's just, that's very, very cool. And doctors are also using my work in their practice, which I love, doctors, nurses, teachers, medical professionals, dietitians, nutritionists, like that also to me is such a key part of my work. Like we're all on the same team. Like we all need to help people be healthier. And so if you're listening and you're a medical professional, you can use any of my content for free in your practice. Like just go for it. That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
So let me read you the stats. So after the 4-week Glucose Goddess method, 90% of people are less hungry. 89% of people have reduced their cravings. 77% of people have more energy. 67% are happier. 58% are sleeping better. 58% have improved their mental health. 46% of people improved their skin, 41% of people improved their diabetes numbers, and 35% of people improved their hormonal health.
Wow.
We're talking 4 weeks. That was 3. We're talking 4 weeks. No restriction, just adding these 4 super easy hacks into your life that balance your glucose levels.
So what are some of these hacks?
Okay, so this is how it goes. So week 1, breakfast. So we switch people from a sweet breakfast to a savory breakfast. And so I have 30 recipes of simple ways to do a savory breakfast at home. The first recipe in the book, as I mentioned, being the perfect 7-minute eggs. And in the recipe photo, I have like my hands like this holding up 2 eggs. It's really cute and kind of alien. I love it. So anything from like super simple, egg-based stuff to my favorite savory smoothie to like halloumi and spinach to like avocado and tuna and whatever. Super easy things. All 6 ingredients or less. A lot of batch recipes you can make in advance.
Like meal prep.
Yeah. But this book is for people who've never bought a cookbook before. It's really the point. The reason I wrote the book in the first place is because after my first book came out, I started getting these weird DMs. People were DMing me and being like, hey, Jessie, loved your book. I get the science. I want to flatten my glucose curves, but I need your help. Can you move in with me? And I got a lot of roommates propositions. So I thought, let me write a book that's kind of like that. It's like moving in with you for 4 weeks and helping you actually do the hacks. So week 1 is breakfast. Week 2 is vinegar. So once a day, 1 tablespoon in a tall glass of water if you want. But I also have 30 recipes of more delicious ways of drinking it, like teas and mocktails and dressings.
Wow.
Week 3, veggie starter. Once a day before 1 meal. A vegetable-based starter. Also super simple. It can be, the first recipe is called Express Fiber, and it's just grabbing like baby carrots from your fridge and just popping 5 into your mouth, all the way to like my mom's 35-minute slow-cooked leeks recipe, like it runs the gamut. And then week 4, you layer in 10 minutes of movement after 1 meal a day. And that's it. And then you get these results.
And how is fiber beneficial?
Fiber's amazing. We love fiber. She's great. Okay, so fiber, if you eat some at the beginning of your meal, and the most easy way to do that is through vegetables, which contain a lot of fiber. When your stomach is empty and fiber is the first thing in it, it deploys itself in your upper intestine into this sort of like viscous protective mesh, and your intestinal walls become less porous. And so as a result, any glucose molecules coming down afterwards don't make their way as quickly and as much into your bloodstream. So the concept of this method is you just add the hacks. The rest of the time you do whatever you want, right? And just by adding them like gentle giants into your life, you start getting benefits, which is why it's so cool.
Yeah. Where do you stand on whole fruit then? I would assume whole fruit is like totally all good, green light.
It's totally fine. And in the morning, it's the best thing to do if you want to eat something sweet. So for a savory breakfast, it needs to be based around protein. And then you can have some starches or some whole fruit for taste. But other than that, whole fruit is totally fine. It's the best thing to eat if you want to eat something sweet. But what most people don't realize is that whole fruit is not natural. Like the fruit we see today in supermarkets, do you know this? It has nothing to do with the fruit that nature created a long time ago. Any fruit today that you can buy at the supermarket is the result of like thousands of years of breeding, selective breeding by humans. I like to take this example. Humans have bred gray wolves into chihuahuas for fun. Same with fruit. If you look at an ancestral banana, it's tiny, it's full of seeds, not very sweet, super difficult to eat. Bananas today are super easy to eat, very juicy, very full of sugar. And we've been doing that to every single fruit, right? So just be mindful that when you see fruit in the supermarket, it's not natural, okay? It's the result of human engineering. That being said, because of the fiber, it's still the best thing to eat if you want to eat something sweet.
Yeah, but it's probably not the case that the fiber has increased.
No, it has decreased.
Proportionally with the increase in sugar.
No.
Which is like, it's probably a non-zero negative health impact.
Absolutely.
I mean, fruit, I think in general is still great. Like eat your fruit, but like, it is worth, planting the seed, no pun intended, that, we've probably bred fruit to contain more sugar and its fiber has probably not increased proportionally.
Absolutely. Completely. Yes. And that's the whole point. It's like in the past, if you ate an ancestral banana, probably wouldn't create a glucose spike. Today, if you eat a real banana, I mean, if you want to be better for your glucose. Maybe add some nuts to that, to balance the spike a little bit more. But then the problem really happens when you denature fruit. So today, when you juice an apple, you're not juicing this like natural thing that came from nature. You're juicing something that has been bred to be mega full of sugar. And so you're getting rid of all the fiber and concentrating this sugar from this piece of fruit that is already bred to be super high in sugar. And so if you have apple juice, you're giving your body a huge load of sugar to deal with. And your body doesn't care whether the sugar came from an apple and is in apple juice, or whether the sugar came from cane and is in a Coca-Cola, right? People have this concept of like good sugar came from fruit, bad sugar, Coca-Cola. Well, actually, it's all the same molecules. Your body doesn't care about the source. It cares about the packaging,
Yeah. The food matrix.
Yeah, the food matrix. Exactly.
Yeah, it's super important. It's so easy to consume the sugar from like 5-6 apples in the form of juice.
Yes. I would challenge you, if you like drinking fruit juice, next time, instead of the juice, try eating the equivalent in whole fruit.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do it.
No.
It's impossible. Even one apple is so much. I can't even eat more than one apple.
No.
But imagine 6. Impossible.
Yeah, I mean, after eating a single Honeycrisp apple, which to me is one of the most delicious fruit, like I love Honeycrisp apples, right?
Nice.
So it would stand to reason that after eating one, I would want to go and eat a second one, but I don't because that single Honeycrisp apple is just, it's so satiating.
Yes, and also we eat it more slowly than we would eat the juice of it,
Is there a time like effect? Like does time actually, the speed at which we consume something, does that play a role?
It does, but I think less than people think. I mean, if you're going to mindfully eat more slowly, you might go from eating something in 3 minutes to eating something in like 7 minutes. But you're not going to go from 3 minutes to 3 hours. So yes, of course, if you drank the juice instead of in 3 minutes, in 3 hours, the load of glucose given to your body would arrive more slowly. So there would be less of a spike. But that's not very realistic.
Yeah. What about some of these so-called non-caloric or sugar-free sweeteners?
Non-nutritive sweeteners, yeah.
Non-nutritive sweeteners, yeah. I think I remember seeing something even before we were friends by you, where somebody from my Instagram sent me like, because I had just tried for the first time some of these sugar-free, better for you candies.
Oh yeah.
And somebody sent me like like one of your graphs saying like, actually, we don't know if this is actually sugar-free because it seems to affect your at least
so some of these
Jessie's blood sugar as much as regular sugar.
Some of these, and this is one of the cases where I am doing just an N of 1 experiment. And I call that out very clearly just to be like, hey, on me, it's causing a spike, just FYI. So it's not universally like sugar-free. Some of these candies have things like tapioca starch or pre-soluble tapioca fiber, stuff that is categorized as fiber, but actually turns to glucose when you digest it. So on the nutrition label, it looks like fiber, but actually on the inside, it's not. So you have to be careful. I mean, listen, my philosophy is if you're going to have candy, like have the real stuff. Because if you're having candy, like it's a pleasure decision, so have the one you like. Yes, sure, you can optimize a little bit. Maybe this candy is a bit better for you than that candy, but that's not where health happens, So I don't know. Personally, I'm more likely to just eat the cookie that I really want versus the keto cookie.
Yeah, and the other thing is like some of these like quote unquote sugar-free candies or confectionery products, like they do use a lot of these fake fibers, and it's obviously debatable whether or not they actually act like fibers in the body. But assuming they do act like fiber in the body, sometimes you end up ingesting like a ton of these fake fibers, which can leave you like feeling super bloated and uncomfortable. Whereas like the original product, like who wants that?
Yeah.
Right? The original product probably goes down way smoother if it's just like sugar.
However, people need to know. So people sometimes think that like the artificial sweeteners are worse for you than the real sugar. So they'll be like, no, like regular Coke is better than Coke Zero, because Coke Zero has artificial sweeteners and that's just really bad for you. And it's not the case. Like it's always better to have the non-nutritive sweetener like erythritol, stevia, allulose, monk fruit, etc., than to have the real stuff like for your body. We need to be very clear about that. It's not like the non-nutritive things are chemical and bad for you. Like yes, they can alter your gut microbiome. Yes, they can increase cravings, but real sugar does that even more. So we have to be cautious with that myth.
Yeah, and also probably in mega doses, right?
Yeah.
Like the dose makes the poison. A couple months ago, there was that erythritol.
Was it a couple months? It feels like it was a week ago.
Yeah, it was a week ago. But when this comes out,
Oh yeah, sorry. Oops.
Get a little bit of behind the scenes there. Well, it did just come out a week ago in real time, but yes, when this airs, it'll be probably a couple months ago old. But yeah, did you like what did you think when you saw those headlines?
I'm very wary of any media headlines that says anything about food. I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't believe anything when it comes to journalism around food, to be honest.
I mean, the headline was on CNN.com, so.
So no, I looked at the study and I thought, I can't remember who it was. Was it Thomas DeLauer? Somebody did or Tim Biohacker. Somebody did a really good expose of like what the study actually said, which was not much. And it was on 6 people and didn't actually draw that many intense conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, maybe imagine we did find that erythritol had an impact. Was it on heart disease? Is that what it was saying or something like that?
Yeah, it was saying that dietary erythritol, there's this like connection where it might promote clotting.
Yeah.
Which obviously you don't want to develop a blood clot, right?
Definitely.
Lead to stroke.
But then, we need to compare that to, okay, so real sugar, that's really bad for heart disease too. It creates LDL type B, which is really the damaging type of cholesterol. So, I mean, everything is relative. The problem arises when we take things in a vacuum and we're like, oh, this is bad. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, what are you comparing it to?
Yeah.
If you stop eating this, what are you going to replace it with?
Exactly.
So it's important.
Yeah. Also, we produce erythritol endogenously. Like we create it in our own bodies.
That's weird.
Yeah. And we create it actually this is another consequence of chronically high levels of blood sugar.
No way.
You create more erythritol with higher levels of blood sugar, higher levels of oxidative stress. And so it's actually, I think one of the potential good things to come from this study, which did not show that dietary erythritol could it just wasn't powered to show that, right? So people were like, drawing conclusions that I don't think you would be able to draw from this study. But I think one thing that it did show potentially was that endogenous erythritol is actually an interesting biomarker.
That's very interesting.
Of like metabolic dysfunction.
Interesting. Wow. So the higher glucose levels, the sweeter you become on the inside.
The sweeter you become on the inside.
Wow.
Yeah, you're producing more erythritol.
Mind blown.
Mind blown. Yeah. So this new book that you've just put out, it's a cookbook?
Well, no. It's a 4-week method.
Got it.
With recipes.
With recipes.
Maybe I'll do a cookbook later. But this is very specifically like this 4-week guide to fast track the steady glucose. That's how I like to see it. Because it's very organized. It's like, okay, week 1, breakfast. Week 2, you continue breakfast, you do vinegar. Week 3, you continue breakfast, vinegar, and now veggie starters. And week 4, you add in movement. So it's really just like a practical step-by-step plan.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And your books now, I mean, they're like a huge success all over the world, which is like amazing,
So
right?
my first book, 40 languages, a million
40?
copies. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, 1 million copies, which is wild. And I'm so happy about this because people are actually healing without a crazy diet. Like just learning principles that, to be honest, Max, like these are things that are common sense. Like we've known for generations that breakfast should be like any other meal, that vinegar is a cool health tool that people have been using for centuries. We know that veggies at the beginning of a meal is good. In France, we have this cultural tradition of crudité, which is raw veggies at the beginning of a meal. In the Middle East, they eat herbs by the bunch at the beginning of a meal. In Italy, they have antipasti. Like we know this stuff.
Here in America, we have the bread basket.
Yeah, I know. I know. And then the movement, people have been doing this for centuries. After a meal, you go walk around the block with your family. Like these are not groundbreaking things, but we've lost touch with them so much. And now we understand the scientific underpinning of why it's actually working. And we can see their impact on the inside of our body. So I'm super excited about this. It's really a really good answer to fixing your glucose levels, because to me, that's like the foundation of health. If your blood sugar is all over the place, you're going to have a hard time layering on extra things to feel good. Like you can do all the supplements you want and you can do all this and that. You can eat gluten-free pasta, but like if your blood sugar is out of whack, you're going to be having a pretty bad time. So to me, it's like the first step to getting to, thriving physical and mental health. This is a good place to start.
When it comes to pastas, are there some that are better than others? Because there are like, there's regular pasta, then you have like the gluten-free rice-based pasta.
Yes.
And then I'm super psyched now on the market, you have like legume-based pastas.
So anything that's based from like rice flour, corn flour, that actually spikes your glucose levels more than wheat pasta, because wheat pasta contains gluten, and gluten is a protein, remember? So actually, you know, regular wheat pasta leads to a smaller spike than things like, as I said, rice, corn, quinoa. The legume-based pastas are really good, actually. So, you know, I think they have like bean pasta, like all that kind of stuff is way better for your glucose levels. It seems to do well.
Are Europeans like open-minded to, like, I feel like legume pasta is something that like we eat here, but like you try to get an Italian to eat legume pasta.
I think that would be difficult to get an Italian to do it. But you know, I mean, there's more and more like sort of organic stores and natural stores where these things are arriving. But we just culturally have, I think, just a better food hygiene in terms of we cook, we eat our meals as a family, you know. On the street, you don't just go to one supermarket. You have like the fishmonger and the produce person and the meat person and the cheese person. And, you know, it's a different relationship to food. We have way less industrial oils in our food. We have way less processed stuff. So I think, yeah, I'm not sure the legume pasta would be as successful there, but it does exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like industrial oils? You mentioned them. It's a super controversial.
I love them. Okay.
It's a controversial topic on social media. Yeah, it is.
Why?
Well, because I feel like there are a lot of more progressive thinkers in the nutrition space who see these novel, refined, bleached, and deodorized oils, and they're like, I don't want those in my body. You know, they didn't exist in the human food supply prior to 50 to 100 years ago.
Yeah, and I think you say it really well. It's like, let's defer to reason a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, let's figure out, okay, is this actually going to be good for me? Like, I'm not sure. And there's a whole movement, you know, a few decades ago about butter is bad, cholesterol is bad, like, let's make margarine. And I'm so happy that we know that's not true anymore. At least I hope, from, you know, the circles I'm in. But we now know that it's much better to have some good quality butter, some olive oil, you know, instead of some industrially processed, hydrogenized something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like they are the perfect. It's like that product, seed oils. I mean, it's a category of products. Obviously, you've got like your soybean oil, your vegetable oil, but it really is like, it's sort of like this at the Venn diagram of like the food, medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. You know, at the center, you find like seed oils.
Wow, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's intense.
It is, but it's because seed oils are so, like, you consume seed oils and, like, you know, relative to saturated fat, dominant fats, you know, they'll bring like LDL cholesterol down, which makes the pharmaceutical industry happy, right? Because statins are the number one selling pharmaceutical drug worldwide. And so that's copacetic with that like line of logic. And then, you know, so it's just like, yeah, it's just like the orthodoxy like continues to love them, even though, again, they're like a novel food and we're consuming more than we've ever consumed in human history. And it's just like this vast public experiment. And so you do get like apologists for like these oils on.
Interesting. I'm an olive oil person. I just love olive oil.
Yeah.
Olive oil and Parmesan. What else?
Yeah. What else? I've been super like dairy. Where does dairy stand on your?
I mean, listen, personally, from a glucose standpoint, like full fat dairy that's good quality is really not that bad for you at all.
Yeah.
You know, and oh my God, I went to the coffee shop this morning and they have now this new trend of pistachio milk.
Yeah. Are you a fan?
Well, listen, any nut milk is like, okay, so nut milks are way better than like oat milk or rice milk because they're not just pure 100% liquid starch. But when it comes to nut milks, the issue is they often have sugar in them. So I asked the barista, I was like, hey, can I have a look at like the actual bottle you use? And so she gave me one and it said like, okay, water, pistachios, cane sugar. I was like, damn, you know, if it's unsweetened,
Yeah.
nut milks are great.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go the dairy route. But you have to be so hyper aware. You're not safe. You never know what's going to be in that pistachio milk, in that almond milk. Like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
So to me, I just defer to the full fat dairy.
I think full fat dairy is great. I do think that when you compare, like, you know, if you're on like if you are on like a weight loss plan, it is pretty seductive that like 1 cup of unsweetened almond milk has 30 calories in it compared to
okay.
I don't know. And obviously no sugar. You're not going to get a glucose spike.
As long as it doesn't have any sugar in it.
No sugar. You can find them now. They're like artisanal, no gums, no carrageenan, none of that crap.
But you have to look, right? You have to be an aware consumer and be like, okay, is this almond milk okay? Like, it's just extra work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is. But some of these like oat milks and like the other stuff, really bad.
I know. And people love oat milk. I mean, it really became like a cult. Like oat milk is like
Why?
a thing.
Why do you think that
I
is?
hate it. I think it's so gross. I don't know. Some people got really into it.
I don't think I've ever even tried it.
What?
I don't think I've ever tried it.
You have to.
Yeah, I don't
Just
think
so
I've
you
ever
know
tried
what it's about.
And here's the thing, I'm not anti-oats. I think that like oats in the right context and like, you know, for the right purpose can be a great food, you know, like, which is probably not something I would have said 5 years ago. But like the soluble fiber, the beta glucans, but yeah, oat milk.
Starch juice.
Starch juice. Wow. Are you still wearing a CGM?
No, I wore one, I think nonstop for maybe a year and a half when I first started this adventure 4 years ago. Now I wear one like once in a while to do some tests so I can post some new stuff, but no. And you know, my audience are people who probably can't really afford a CGM. And I want to make content and a method and hacks that are for everybody, regardless of how much money you're able to spend. So my philosophy is you don't need one. You know, if you start doing the hacks, you're actually going to feel better. Your cravings go down, sleep gets better, energy improves, skin improves. Like you feel it. Your brain is sharper. So generally, and all these people in this pilot experiment, they were not wearing a glucose monitor, but they were able to very easily see how all these symptoms were improving. So you don't need one. If you have one, totally cool. If you have one, make sure you have enough context and education around how to understand the numbers because it can be a little bit overwhelming. My first book, Glucose Revolution, is a good resource for that. If you're just starting out with the CGM and you want like some guidance about what's going on and what to do.
Yeah.
What about you?
Do I wear a CGM? I tried one for 2 weeks and I got some really interesting data from it.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, but it's not something that I feel like I need to wear all the time. But I do think it's worth doing, you know, like as an audit, like for a time. Same way that I think that like if you are completely naive to the calorie content of food, this is not something that should dictate your life or your dietary choices ultimately, but like as just an audit, you know, like some people are just completely unaware of like what they're ingesting every day, you know? Same with like sleep tracking, you know, like I think, like I have a sleep tracker and when I first got it, I was like every day, like after waking up, I would look at it. Yeah.
I got this thing called 8 Sleep.
Yeah, I have one.
It's my favorite thing in the whole world.
Yeah,
it keeps your bed cool. I have it at -2. -3 when I fall asleep and then -2 the rest of the night. What's yours?
I think -4. I like it cold, but I sleep hot. You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that thing.
Yeah, they're dope.
So much better.
And we are sponsored by 8 Sleep. So
no way.
Yeah, we have no. I just think, you know,
I did not know this, by the way.
No,
guys.
I love it, but as like a, you know, science like communicator, I think it's important. You've got to disclose. But I was using a mattress cooler before I got the 8 Sleep, and the 8 Sleep to me is like an upgrade because it not only cools and heats your mattress, but it like
has the stats as well.
It has the stats, yeah. So you don't even have to worry about wearing whatever.
At first, I was a bit concerned. I was like, okay, there's water in this thing and it's plugged into the wall. Like, am I going to get electrocuted? It's not. It feels a bit weird at the beginning. You're like, water, electricity, me, what? You know?
Yeah. And it also has like an alarm. It like vibrates to wake you up.
Yeah, I haven't tried that.
Yeah. But it's cool. It's great. I mean, we know that thermoregulation is like an important part of like.
Yeah, good sleep.
Yeah, good sleep.
Recovery.
Yeah.
Deep sleep.
Do you find that your glucose, like when you were wearing the CGM, did you have like higher glucose variability on days that you were underslept?
Oh my God, yes. Insanely. It really affects your body. I mean, when you're not rested, your body can't perform its functions as well as it used to. And also what's kind of annoying is that when you're tired, you crave more sweet foods because you want that dopamine because you don't feel good. So as a result, the same foods are going to create bigger spikes because you're tired and you want to eat those sweet and starchy foods even more. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. What I found helps is that if you're tired, do 10 minutes of high intensity exercise in the morning. And that seems to reset a little bit things for me. And then if you're tired, use the hacks. It's even more important so that you don't create this big roller coaster for the whole day, which might even make you sleep worse that night.
Wow.
Right? So it's like the vicious situation.
So do high intensity exercise on days.
Like 10 minutes.
Yeah, that you're underslept potentially to offset some of that, some of those cravings.
Yeah.
Wow. Super valuable. Man, you're just you are such a good resource.
Oh, thank you,
just
Max.
a fountain of knowledge. What's like next for you?
Well, I mean, this book I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
And we're all starting together on May 22nd, Monday, May 22nd. We're all starting the Glucose Goddess method together. I'm so excited about this. I can't even tell you. Like, I'm even more excited about this book than about the first one because it's so visual, you know, it's full of colors, and I was able to make something that really has a strong personality. Like, you open the book and it's like, whoa, this Glucose Goddess, you know, it feels like cool. So that was super fun. And I know it's something people have been asking me about for a long time. So
are there like rainbows all over the book? Because I feel like you're kind of famous on Instagram for
you know, I didn't use the rainbow, but there are rainbow colors.
Rainbow colors.
Lots of rainbow colors. It's really gorgeous. Lots of food cutouts. So, you know, in my graphs, I have always these little cutouts of the food that I'm testing and the spike. So those food cutouts are throughout the book. The ingredients are food cutouts. Every week has a massive food cutout as like their hero of the week. Tons of testimonials from people who were in the pilot experiment. I have all the names of the pilot experiment participants at the end of the book. 2,700 of them, printed really, really small.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you do that in conjunction with like a university, or like how do you run
just
that?
Just me. I just recruited on Instagram, made a separate Instagram account for them, got their emails, and made content every day to like help them remember what to do. Sent surveys via email, all just from my living room. I'm a lean machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly.
But I would love to do a proper, because this is not a study. There's no control group. Like, it's not, you know, it's just an experiment. I would love to do something more scientifically well organized, you know, but I would need some funding and to find a partner university, but I would love to do that. Maybe I'll do that next year.
Yeah. Where are you based again? You're in
between Paris and New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
Irritability, sleep issues, anxiety, mood swings, feeling wired but tired, having trouble getting up in the morning, light sensitivity. All of these kind of strange symptoms where I think a lot of us have felt at some point in our lives where we've been through a significant amount of stress and we just feel burned out.